My name is Brian. I'm 67 years old and I've been retired for 2 years. I worked 35 years in corporate management, raised two kids, and thought I knew everything about money. On October 2nd, 2009, I sat at my kitchen table and realized I was financially destroyed. At 55 years old, despite making good money my entire career, I was nowhere near ready for retirement. I had fallen into four money traps that almost cost me everything. Right now, you might be thinking that won't happen to me. That's exactly what I thought. I'm sharing this because I wish someone had grabbed me by the shoulders 20 years ago and shown me what I'm about to show you. I started my career in 1985, fresh out of college with a business degree and more confidence than sense. That first job offer of $32,000 a year felt like winning the lottery. I remember calling my parents from my tiny apartment, practically shouting into the phone that I had made it. I was going to be rich. I was going to have everything I ever wanted. The early years seemed to prove me right. Every 2 years brought a promotion, a raise, more responsibility. By 1988, I was making $38,000. By 1990, when I married my wife after a 3 year courtship, I was pulling in $42,000 and felt like I was on top of the world. She was working too, making about $28,000 as a teacher, and together we felt unstoppable. We bought our first house in 1992, a modest 3 bedroom ranch in what everyone called an up and coming neighborhood. The mortgage was $1,200 a month, which seemed manageable on our combined income of $75,000. Our first child arrived in 1993, followed by our second in 1995. Life was unfolding exactly according to the American Dream playbook I had been taught since childhood. By 2000, I was making $65,000 and felt absolutely unstoppable. Every year brought new milestones, new achievements, new reasons to celebrate. We upgraded to a bigger house in a better school district. We bought newer cars. We started taking annual family vacations to places like Disney World and the beach. From the outside, we looked like the picture of middle class success. The validation came from everywhere. Neighbors would comment on our beautiful lawn and freshly painted shutters. Coworkers would admire the family photos on my desk from our latest vacation. Even my father, who had worked factory jobs his entire life, would beam with pride when he talked about his son, the manager who wore a tie to work every day. The social proof was intoxicating. But here's what I realize now, what I wish I had understood then. All of these external markers of success were actually warning signs of financial disaster in the making. We were living in what I now call the illusion of prosperity. We looked successful, we felt successful, but we were building our lives on a foundation of financial ignorance. I genuinely believed that a steady paycheck and a 401k were all I needed for financial security. That was the extent of my retirement planning. I thought that as long as I showed up to work, did my job, and contributed enough to get the company match, everything would work out fine. I never questioned this assumption. I never ran the numbers. I never calculated what retirement would actually cost. The dangerous part was how gradual it all felt. Every raise meant we could afford something nicer, something better. When I got promoted in 1997 and my salary jumped to $55,000, we immediately started talking about upgrading the kitchen. When I hit $60,000 in 1999, we decided we needed a second car that was more reliable. Each increase in income became an immediate increase in lifestyle. The credit card started as a convenience, then became a crutch, then became a way of life. It began innocently enough with what we called emergency purchases, the washing machine breaking down, the car needing unexpected repairs, Christmas gifts that were more expensive than we had budgeted for. But gradually, the definition of emergency expanded to include things like furniture, electronics, and eventually just regular monthly shortfalls. I was contributing just enough to my 401k to get the company match, usually around 3% of my salary. In my mind, I was being smart. I was getting free money from my employer. What I didn't understand was that this minimal contribution was nowhere near enough to fund the retirement lifestyle I was already envisioning in my head. We refinanced our house twice during these years, and both times we pulled out equity for what seemed like smart financial moves. And the first time, in 1999, we used the money for home improvements that we convinced ourselves would add value. The second time, in 2003, we consolidated some credit card debt and did more renovations. Each time, the mortgage broker assured us we were making intelligent decisions. Each time, we felt clever and financially savvy. The most dangerous part of these years was that I never read a single book about personal finance. I never met with a financial advisor. I never calculated what we would actually need for retirement. I was flying completely blind, making major financial decisions based on gut feelings and social pressure rather than mathematical reality. I assumed that our house would appreciate in value forever. I assumed that my salary would continue to grow indefinitely. I assumed that Social Security would provide a significant portion of our retirement income. I assumed that healthcare costs in retirement would be manageable. Every single one of these assumptions turned out to be dangerous and wrong. Looking back, I was living in a financial fantasy land. I was confusing the appearance of wealth with actual wealth building. I was mistaking a good income for financial security. The steady paycheck, the nice house, the annual vacations, the respect of my peers, all of it created a false sense of confidence that prevented me from asking the hard questions about our financial future. Ask yourself this question right now. Are you confusing a good income with actual wealth building? Are you making the same assumptions I made about your financial future? Because I was making all the money moves that society told me were right, all the decisions that looked responsible from the outside, but they were slowly, steadily destroying my future without me even realizing it. By 2005, I was making $72,000 a year and we were spending $74,000. Let that sink in for a moment. Despite earning what most people would consider a very good income, we were going backwards every single month. The extra $2,000 was going on credit cards, and we had convinced ourselves this was temporary. We told ourselves we were simply borrowing from future raises, that next year's income would cover this year's overspending. This is the first destructive habit that nearly destroyed my retirement, and I see it everywhere today. Living paycheck to paycheck despite having a good income. We weren't poor by any measure, but we were spending every penny that came in, plus money we didn't have. Every month felt like a financial tightrope walk, and I was too proud to admit we had a problem. Let me break down exactly where our money was going, because the details matter. We were spending between $800 and $1,000 every single month on restaurants and takeout. $800. That's more than many people spend on groceries for their entire family. But it never felt excessive because it happened $30 and $50 at a time. A quick lunch here, a family dinner there, pizza when we were too tired to cook. It all seemed so reasonable in the moment. Our car situation was even worse. We always had two car payments running simultaneously, usually totaling between $600 and $800 per month. The moment one car was paid off, we would start talking about how old it was getting, how unreliable it might become, how we deserved something newer and better. I was trapped in what I now recognize as the perpetual payment cycle, always owing money on depreciating assets. Then there were what I called the lifestyle expenses that felt absolutely necessary. The golf membership that cost $180 per month, the premium cable package with every sports channel imaginable, the latest electronics and gadgets that I convinced myself I needed for work or family life. Each expense seemed small and justified when viewed in isolation, but together they were consuming our entire income and then some. Our children's activities and expenses were another massive drain that we never questioned. Private sports leagues, expensive equipment that had to be replaced constantly, college prep courses, summer camps. Every parent in our circle was spending similar amounts, so it felt normal and necessary. We told ourselves we were investing in our children's future, but we were actually stealing from our own. The justification trap was insidious and powerful. I worked hard, I told myself. My family deserved these things. We had earned the right to enjoy the fruits of my labor. I was providing for my family the way a good father and husband should. These weren't luxuries, they were necessities for maintaining our position in the community and ensuring our children had every opportunity. But here's the math that should terrify anyone listening to this story. If I had invested just the money we spent on restaurants, that $800 to $1,000 per month, with average market returns, it would be worth over $180,000 today. The car payments, if invested instead of spent on depreciation and interest, would have grown to nearly $200,000. Every single dollar we overspent cost us approximately $4 in retirement wealth when you factor in compound interest and opportunity costs. We paid over $35,000 in credit card interest alone between 2000 and 2009. $35,000 in pure interest payments that bought us absolutely nothing except the privilege of spending money we didn't have. That amount invested properly would have grown to over $140,000 by now. I was literally paying a fortune for the right to destroy my financial future. The second destructive habit was my complete ignorance about my 401k. Despite thinking I was being responsible, I was putting in 3% of my salary to get the 3% company match. And in my mind, I was winning. Free money from my employer, I told myself. I was being smart about retirement planning. The reality was that I was doing the absolute minimum and calling it adequate. I had no idea that the funds I had selected in my 401k were charging me 2.3% in annual fees. I didn't understand that these high fees were eating away at my returns year after year. I never researched better options. I never increased my contribution percentage despite getting raises every single year. The most devastating mistake was that I borrowed $25,000 from my 401k in 2004 to renovate our kitchen, and I never properly paid it back. After 20 years of what I thought was a responsible retirement saving, I had only $180,000 in my 401k. 20 years of contributing, and that's all I had to show for it. When I finally learned how to calculate what that balance should have been with proper contributions and fund selection, the number was $450,000. I had cost myself $270,000 through ignorance and neglect. The retirement calculation that finally woke me up was stark and terrifying. To maintain our current lifestyle in retirement, we would need at least $1.2 million in invested assets. We were spending $74,000 per year, and even assuming some expenses would decrease in retirement, we would need significant investment income to support ourselves. Social Security might provide $30,000 annually, which left a massive gap that our investments would need to fill. I was financially illiterate while making financially literate money. I had convinced myself that earning a good income was the same as building wealth. I thought that having a 401k was the same as having an adequate retirement plan. I believed that our house and our lifestyle were assets rather than recognizing them as the liabilities they actually were. How much is actually in your retirement accounts right now? When did you last check the actual numbers, not just the quarterly statement you glanced at and filed away? Because here's what I learned the hard way. Every dollar you spend today is stealing compound interest from your future self. Every purchase decision you make is actually a retirement decision, whether you realize it or not. The 2008 financial crisis hit our household like a freight train that I never saw coming. I watched my 401k balance plummet from $180,000 to $127,000 in just 6 months. Every day I would check the balance online, hoping it was some kind of mistake, watching years of contributions evaporate before my eyes. The psychological impact was crushing, but the real terror was just beginning. My company started implementing layoffs in early 2009. People who had worked there for 15, 20 years were suddenly cleaning out their desks and walking to the parking lot with boxes of personal items. I realized for the first time in my career that my income wasn't guaranteed. The steady paycheck I had built my entire financial life around could disappear with a single conversation in my manager's office. Our house, which we had refinanced twice to pull out equity, lost $80,000 in value seemingly overnight. We were suddenly underwater on our mortgage, owing $280,000 on a house worth $200,000. The American dream of real estate appreciation had turned into a nightmare of negative equity. All those home improvements we had funded with refinancing felt like the stupidest decisions we had ever made. The credit card companies started tightening their grip. Our available credit limits were reduced without warning. Cards that had given us $15,000 limits were suddenly cut to $8,000, and we were already carrying balances close to the new limits. The financial safety net we thought we had was yanked away precisely when we needed it most. Then came October 2nd, 2009. I will never forget that date as long as I live. My wife found a letter from one of our credit card companies threatening to close our account due to late payments and over-limit fees. She walked into the kitchen where I was reading the newspaper, dropped the letter on the table, and said we needed to figure out exactly where we stood financially. We spent the next 4 hours spreading every bill, every statement, every piece of financial documentation across our kitchen table. The picture that emerged was absolutely devastating. We owed $280,000 on our mortgage for a house worth $200,000. We had $45,000 in credit card debt spread across 7 different cards, most carrying interest rates between 18% and 24%. We had $38,000 remaining on 2 car loans for vehicles that were worth maybe $25,000 combined. On the asset side, the numbers were pathetic. My 401k had recovered slightly to $135,000, but that was our only significant asset. We had maybe $2,000 in checking and savings accounts combined. No emergency fund, no investments outside of the 401k, no financial cushion whatsoever. We were 55 and 53 years old, respectively, and our net worth was deeply negative. This brings me to the third destructive habit that was killing our retirement prospects, carrying massive debt into our pre-retirement years. We were paying $1,800 every single month just in interest payments. $1,800, that was buying us absolutely nothing except the privilege of having spent money we didn't have in previous years. That money could have been growing through compound investment returns, but instead it was being flushed away to credit card companies and banks. Let me tell you about the European vacation that was still haunting us in 2009. In 2008, we had decided that we deserved a special trip to celebrate our 18th wedding anniversary. We spent $15,000 on flights, hotels, meals, and activities across France and Italy. It was magical, it was romantic, it was everything we had dreamed of. It was also entirely financed by credit cards, and we were still paying 18% interest on that debt more than a year later. Every month, we were paying over $300 just in interest on that vacation. By the time we finished paying it off, that 2-week trip cost us nearly $25,000. We could have taken the same trip 5 years later, paid cash, and still had money left over if we had simply been disciplined about saving and debt elimination. The opportunity cost of our debt was staggering once I finally calculated it. That brought $800 per month in interest payments, if invested in the stock market over the previous 10 years, would have grown to over $350,000. We had literally paid a fortune for the right to destroy our own financial future. But perhaps the most dangerous habit of all was that we had no clear retirement vision or plan. I had spent 25 years assuming that everything would somehow work out fine without ever running the actual numbers. I figured Social Security and my 401k would somehow be enough, but I had never calculated what enough actually meant. I had never considered that healthcare could cost $1,500 or more per month in retirement. I had never factored in inflation, never understood that $50,000 in today's purchasing power would require $75,000 in income 20 years from now. I had no timeline for retirement, no target savings amount, no strategy for managing taxes on retirement withdrawals. The most humbling realization was that I had been making major financial decisions for decades based on hopes and assumptions rather than mathematical reality. I hoped our house would continue appreciating. I assumed my salary would keep growing indefinitely. I believed that modest 401k contributions would somehow multiply into adequate retirement income. That October night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, knowing that I had wasted 25 years of earning potential. My wife was crying quietly beside me, probably having the same realization about our future that was keeping me awake. We were facing the possibility of working until we died, of never being able to retire, of being a financial burden on the children. Look inside your own heart right now. Do you know your real retirement number? Have you calculated what your lifestyle will actually cost when you start working? Because sometimes you need to hit rock bottom to find the motivation to climb out of the hole you've been digging for decades. 3 weeks after that devastating kitchen table reckoning, I made the most humbling phone call of my adult life. I called a financial advisory firm and scheduled an appointment. Walking into that office felt like admitting I was a complete failure at something I should have mastered decades earlier. At 55 years old, I was about to receive my first real financial education. The advisor was a woman in her 40s named Sarah, and she had the kind of calm professionalism that made me feel both comfortable and ashamed at the same time. I spread our financial documents across her conference table, the same papers that had revealed our dire situation 3 weeks earlier. She reviewed everything in silence for what felt like an eternity. When she finally looked up, her words cut through me like a knife. She said, We were approximately 15 years behind where we needed to be for retirement. 15 years. She explained that based on our current spending, our debt load, and our minimal retirement savings, we would need 1.4 million invested to retire comfortably at 65. We had $135,000 in retirement savings and were 1.2 million short with only 10 years to catch up. The mathematics were brutal but undeniable. She showed me charts and projections that made it clear we had two choices: dramatically changed everything about our financial lives immediately, or plan to work until we were physically unable to continue. There was no middle ground, no gradual adjustment that would solve our problem. We needed radical transformation. Sarah helped us create what she called an emergency financial plan. It required cutting our monthly expenses by $2,300, eliminating all debt within 5 years, and maximizing every possible retirement contribution. She explained debt elimination strategies, showed us how compound interest could work for us instead of against us, and laid out a timeline that seemed impossible but was mathematically sound. The next 6 years, from 2009 to 2015, were the most challenging and transformative period of our marriage. We had to completely relearn how to live, how to spend, how to think about money and the future. Every single financial decision became a referendum on whether we wanted short-term pleasure or long-term security. We sold both of our cars within 2 months of meeting with Sarah. The combined loan balances were $38,000, but the cars were only worth $25,000 total. We had to take a personal loan for $13,000 just to get out from under the negative equity. Then we bought two reliable used vehicles with cash, a 2004 Honda Accord and a 2005 Toyota Camry, spending a total of $18,000. It was humbling to drive older cars than many of our friends, but our transportation costs dropped from $680 per month to zero. The housing decision was agonizing. We seriously considered selling our house and downsizing, but we were so underwater on the mortgage that it would have required bringing $80,000 to closing that we didn't have. Instead, we attacked every house-related expense we could control. We canceled the lawn service and started doing yard work ourselves. We learned to do basic maintenance and repairs rather than calling contractors. We refinanced to a lower interest rate and started paying extra principal every month. Our lifestyle overhaul was comprehensive and painful. We went from eating out 5 or 6 times per week to cooking at home 6 nights per week. Our restaurant budget dropped from $900 per month to $150 total. I canceled my golf membership, saving $180 monthly. We downgraded to basic cable and eliminated premium channels. We started shopping at discount stores and buying generic brands whenever possible. The vacation elimination was particularly difficult for our family relationships. We had taken annual family vacations for 15 years, and suddenly we couldn't afford any trips at all. Our teenage children were frustrated and embarrassed. They didn't understand why we had suddenly become so restrictive about money. Many difficult conversations happened around our dinner table during those years. Let me show you exactly how our monthly budget transformed. Before the crisis, we were spending $600 per month on everything from mortgage to entertainment. After implementing our emergency plan, we cut that to $4,000 per month. We were putting $1,500 monthly toward debt. Elimination, using the debt snowball method to attack the highest interest balances first. We increased retirement contributions by $700 per month, and we started building our first ever emergency fund with $300 monthly. The family resistance was intense, and heartbreaking at times. Our children complained constantly about our sudden frugality. They were embarrassed when friends invited them to expensive activities we could no longer afford. Our son wanted to quit his part time job because his friends didn't have to work, but we explained that his contribution to his own expenses was now necessary for our family's survival. We lost some friendships during this period. Couples we had socialized with for years started excluding us from expensive dinners and weekend trips. Some people thought we had become cheap and boring. Others seemed uncomfortable around us, as if our financial problems might be contagious. The social isolation was unexpected and painful. My marriage was tested in ways I hadn't anticipated. My wife and I had to completely relearn how to communicate about money, how to make joint decisions about spending, how to support each other through the daily sacrifices our new lifestyle required. We had arguments about expenses that seemed trivial but represented deeper questions about our values and priorities. There were so many moments when we almost gave up, when the car needed a major repair and we had to use emergency fund money instead of putting it on a credit card, when our friends went on a vacation that we would have joined in previous years, when our daughter cried because she couldn't participate in an expensive school trip that all her friends were taking. But we also celebrated milestone victories that kept us motivated. We paid off our first credit card in 8 months, eliminating a $3,200 balance. We reached our initial emergency fund goal of $5,000. I increased my 401k contribution to the maximum allowed by 2012. We started making extra principal payments on our mortgage and watched the balance drop faster than ever before. The hardest part wasn't actually the sacrifice. The hardest part was admitting that I needed to change everything about how I thought about money and the future. So I'm asking you, just as someone who learned the hard way would, what are you willing to give up today to save your retirement tomorrow? Because every purchase you make now is either building your future or destroying it. March 15th, 2014 will forever be etched in my memory as the day we made our final credit card payment. We had eliminated $47,000 in credit card debt over 4.5 years of relentless discipline and sacrifice. My wife and I both cried that night, sitting at the same kitchen table where we had confronted our financial disaster 5 years earlier. For the first time in decades, we could breathe freely without the crushing weight of debt suffocating our future. The emotional release was overwhelming. We had been carrying this burden for so long that we had forgotten what financial peace felt like. That night, we calculated that we suddenly had $1,800 per month that was no longer going to interest payments and minimum balances. $1,800 every month that we could redirect towards building wealth instead of servicing debt. The transformation from wealth destruction to wealth creation happened overnight. We immediately redirected every penny of those freed up debt payments into retirement and investment accounts. The $1,800 monthly that had been feeding credit card companies was now feeding our future selves through compound investment growth. The psychological shift was as important as the mathematical one. We went from feeling like financial failures to feeling like we were finally taking control of our destiny. The compound effect of our changes began accelerating in ways that surprised even me. My 401k balance, which had languished at $135,000 for years, suddenly started growing at an explosive rate. By 2016, just 7 years after our financial wake up call, the balance had reached $425,000. The combination of maximum contributions, employer matching, market recovery, and compound growth had created momentum that felt almost magical. But we didn't stop with just the 401k. We opened Roth IRA accounts for both of us and maximized those contributions as well. We started a taxable investment account for additional savings beyond the retirement account limits. By 2016, our total invested assets outside of real estate had grown to $605,000. We had built more wealth in 7 years than in the previous 25 years combined. Our real estate situation also improved dramatically. The housing market recovery helped our home value climb back to $320,000, while our aggressive principal payments had reduced the mortgage balance to $150,000. Our home equity had grown from negative $80,000 to positive $170,000. The total transformation of our net worth was staggering. We had gone from a negative net worth in 2009 to over $650,000 in positive net worth by 2016. During these years, I became obsessed with financial education in a way that I wish had happened 30 years earlier. I read every retirement planning book I could find. I took online courses about investing, taxes, and retirement withdrawal strategies. I listened to financial podcasts during my commute and watched educational videos in the evenings. The knowledge I acquired was transformative and empowering. One of the most important things I learned was about investment fees and how they had been destroying my returns for decades. I discovered that the funds in my 401k were charging me 2.3% annually in fees, which over time had cost me tens of thousands of dollars in lost growth. I moved everything to low-cost index funds with fees under 0.2% annually. That simple change saved me 1.8% per year in fees, which translates to enormous amounts over decades of investing. I also learned about tax strategies that I had never considered. Roth conversions, tax loss harvesting, asset location strategies, and retirement withdrawal sequencing became part of my vocabulary and planning process. I realized that taxes would be one of the biggest expenses in retirement if not managed properly, and I started positioning our accounts to give us maximum flexibility and minimum tax burden. For the first time in my life, we created comprehensive estate planning documents. Wills, trusts, beneficiary designations, and powers of attorney were all established properly. I realized that we had been flying blind, not just with retirement planning, but with protecting our family in case something happened to either of us. The reduction in financial stress had unexpected benefits throughout my life. My job performance actually improved because I wasn't constantly worried about money. I was more focused, more creative, and more confident in my professional relationships. In 2015, I was promoted to senior manager with a salary increase to $85,000. I had also learned to negotiate raises more effectively, something I had never done in my earlier career. I started a small consulting business on weekends, leveraging my professional experience to bring in an additional $8,000 annually. This side income went directly into investments, further accelerating our wealth building. I also finally learned to maximize all of our employee benefits, properly utilizing health savings accounts, flexible spending accounts, and optimizing our insurance coverage. Our retirement vision became crystal clear and specific rather than vague and hopeful. We wanted to retire at 65 with the ability to generate $80,000 annually in income from our investments and Social Security. We researched Medicare and supplemental insurance options, budgeting $18,000 annually for healthcare costs. We planned for travel, hobbies, and contributing to our future grandchildren's education funds within a realistic budget. And the transformation of our marriage was one of the most unexpected and beautiful aspects of this journey. Working toward common financial goals brought us closer together than we had been in years. We started having weekly financial meetings where we reviewed our progress, discussed upcoming expenses, and celebrated our milestones. Money, which had been a source of stress and argument, became a tool for building our shared future. We also began teaching our children real financial skills. Family financial meetings became opportunities to share what we were learning about investing, budgeting, and long term planning. Both of our children started investing in Roth IRAs during their college years, something I wish someone had taught me at that age. Our social circle evolved in positive ways. We found friends who shared our values about saving and investing rather than spending and consuming. We discovered that some of our most fulfilling relationships were with people who understood the importance of financial discipline and long term thinking. The person I became through this journey was worth more than the money I saved. If you're 45 and starting this transformation, you have 20 years of compound interest ahead of you. But if you're 55, like I was when I started, every single month matters exponentially. The difference between starting now and starting next year could be tens of thousands of dollars in retirement security. On my 65th birthday in June 2019, I walked into my manager's office and submitted my retirement letter. After 34 years with the same company, I was finally financially free to live on my own terms. The numbers that had terrified me a decade earlier were now working in my favor. I had 1.1 million in retirement accounts and an additional $250,000 in other investments. We owned our home outright with zero debt payments of any kind. My monthly retirement income comes from two sources that provide us with financial security, Avi. Never thought possible. Our investments generate approximately $4,200 per month through systematic withdrawals, and Social Security provides another $2,800 monthly between my wife and myself. That $7,000 monthly income, combined with no debt payments, gives us more spending power in retirement than we had during many of our working years. The peace of mind that comes with debt-free living cannot be overstated. Every morning when I wake up, I know that our house payment is zero, our car payments are zero, and our credit card balances are zero. The money we receive each month is ours to spend on living expenses, healthcare, travel, and helping our children and grandchildren. There are no creditors, no minimum payments, no interest charges eating away at our income. Our healthcare situation, which had been one of my biggest retirement fears, is well managed and affordable. We have Medicare supplemented with a private insurance policy that costs us about $400 monthly combined. We budget $1,500 per month total for all healthcare expenses, including prescriptions, dental, and vision care. Having this planned and budgeted removes the anxiety that healthcare costs create for many retirees. The lifestyle we can afford in retirement exceeds what I had dared to hope for during those dark years of debt elimination. We take 3 or 4 trips per year, visiting our children and grandchildren, exploring national parks, and occasionally taking international vacations. The difference now is that every trip is paid for in cash from our travel budget rather than added to credit card debt that would haunt us for years. We are actively involved in our 3 grandchildren's lives in ways that bring us tremendous joy. We contribute $2,000 annually to each child's 529 college savings plan, and we frequently take them on educational trips and activities. Being able to provide financial support to the next generation while maintaining our own security feels like the ultimate. achievement of our financial transformation. My volunteer work with community financial literacy programs has become one of the most meaningful activities of my retirement. I teach workshops for people in their 40s and 50s who are facing the same financial wake up calls I experience. Sharing our story and helping others avoid the mistakes I made has given me a sense of purpose that I never expected to find in retirement. But let me be completely honest about what I wish I had done differently, because these regrets still sting when I think about the opportunities I wasted. If I had started this financial journey at 35 instead of 55, I could have retired at 60 with the same lifestyle we have now. Those 20 lost years of compound growth represent hundreds of thousands of dollars in missed wealth building. The financial education I finally pursued in my 50s should have been a priority from the moment I started earning a professional salary. Every book I read, every concept I learned, every strategy I implemented could have been applied decades earlier with exponentially greater results. The ignorance that I wore like a badge of honor in my 30s and 40s cost me a fortune in lost opportunities. The debt I accumulated and the interest I paid over 20 years could have funded my entire retirement if I had been disciplined from the beginning. That $35,000 in credit card interest, the unnecessary car payments, the lifestyle inflation that seemed so reasonable at the time, all of it could have grown into massive wealth if invested properly from the start. I also should have hired a financial advisor in my 30s rather than waiting until crisis forced me to seek professional help. The cost of professional advice would have been insignificant compared to the value it would have provided over decades. Pride and overconfidence prevented me from admitting I needed help until it was almost too late. The impact of our transformation has rippled through our entire family in ways I never anticipated. Both of our children learned from our mistakes and started investing seriously in their 20s. Our daughter maximizes her 401k contribution and has already accumulated more retirement savings at 30 than I had at 45. Our son bought his first house with a substantial down payment and refuses to carry credit card debt. Several couples in our social circle followed our example and completely transformed their own finances. 3 families in our neighborhood have eliminated their debt and maximized their retirement contributions after watching our journey. The influence extends beyond our immediate circle through my volunteer work, where I have helped dozens of people create their own financial turnaround plans. Current financial habits remain disciplined even though we could afford to relax our vigilance. We still track every expense and live on approximately 80% of our retirement income, allowing the remaining 20% to continue growing for unexpected expenses or legacy planning. We review our investment portfolio quarterly and rebalance annually, maintaining the discipline that got us to this point. We maintain 12 months of expenses in cash for true emergencies, something we never had during our working years. This emergency fund provides security against market downturns, unexpected healthcare costs, or family emergencies that might require financial assistance. The peace of mind this provides is worth more than any potential investment returns we might miss. I continue reading financial books and staying current on retirement strategies because I learned that financial education is never complete. Tax laws change, investment options evolve, and economic conditions shift in ways that require ongoing learning and adaptation. The curiosity and commitment to learning that saved our retirement continues to serve us well. If you're 40, you have 25 years to build wealth, and that timeline represents enormous power if you use it wisely. If you're in your 50s, like I was when I started, you're in the danger zone, but it's absolutely not too late to create a secure retirement. If you're 60 or older, every single financial decision you make from this point forward is critical to your survival and dignity in retirement. No one is coming to save your retirement except you. The government won't save you. Your employer won't save you. Your children shouldn't have to save you. Your retirement security is your responsibility, and the decisions you make today will determine whether your golden years are truly golden or filled with financial stress and regret.